Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. My name is Bliss Foster. Welcome back to the Margiela series, where we're exploring every single runway show that Martin Margiela produced at his eponymous house. We find ourselves today in fall-winter 2003. We have a lot of nuanced details to cover this season, and we're going to be moving very quickly, so stick with me, buckle in. The first big thing to note here is that this is the final season that Martin Margiela will be at Hermes. He started in 1997, and this will literally be the final season at his own house, where he will also be at Hermes. His tenure at Hermes will end in October. That is important because Martin has been effectively splitting his time between two separate jobs. None of the shows during his tenure at Hermes have been bad, of course. I've liked all of them, but there's definitely been some evidence that he has had to split his time and has not had as much time to devote to his own label. After this show, he will be fully back and fully focused on just his own house. So this show takes place in a temporary building in Paris that was built to house an exhibition which claimed to be a, quote, three-dimensional journey through an imaginary city retracing history and culture in the 20th century. So it's like a temporary building that was meant to be a museum exhibition. As you can imagine, using that space for a Margiela show is going to feel at least slightly unsettling given Martin's surrealist sensibilities, and even more so because the models were instructed to make a lot of eye contact with the audience. But yeah, an easy way of thinking about this is that they're doing a show in a very elaborate, huge movie set. The models walk down the runway accompanied by two assistants each, who wore black and carried large light boxes to illuminate the models from the front and the back. And everything was covered in party stuff. The Maisons employees in the white lab coats went before everyone else to throw down yellow confetti onto the runway before the show began. It's also kind of funny that they're doing this with the same disaffected body language of someone who's spreading mulch. A little bit less of the like, confetti! And a little bit more of like, confetti. More party things. The models had tabby boots with confetti glued onto them, and some even held a clump of streamers as they walked, and some had streamers attached to their ankles. And some at least embodied the real body language of confetti and were like, confetti, when they were walking. Shouts out to those models for keeping the vision alive. But yeah, the whole vibe here is like a hangover of the 20th century. Like, the big Y2K party has happened, and now we all have to go home, and the weird reality of 9 a.m. is setting in. Kind of them looking back at the turn of the century a couple of years later. So we have even more experiments with the ways of looking at the past, like the Maison has always done, but here for the first time it is the recent past, just 3 years prior, the year 2000. Let's wind it back for a second and talk about the relationship that runway shows have to the collections that are featured in them. This is pretty important to remember generally, but it's especially important in this Margiela show, so we're going to do a quick overview. There's some designers that make that relationship very literal, where the themes and motifs of the clothes themselves are echoed in the location and the model selection and the music. But more often than not, the runway show's setting elements are more like a music video's relationship to the song itself. The two aren't connected in a literal way, it's more a way for the band to explore their own aesthetic, and the two only have a relationship in the context of them being literally connected in a music video. And that's what we're up to in this Margiela show. This location, the really unique lighting for this show, etc. These things do fit nicely into Margiela's exploration of the past, his philosophy of reuse. But it would be dishonest for me to try and make this a one-to-one comparison between the clothes themselves and this artificial city, for example. Now that that is clear, let's move on. One of the most important elements of this collection is the color yellow. What do we typically think of when we think of the color yellow? The sun, sunflowers, the state of Florida, illustrations of the sun, happiness, digital depictions of the sun. Just general optimism, right? That's typically how yellow gets used. So in this show, it's a very, very different context. You know how like your mom's old belt from the 80s that's supposed to be translucent but has turned into this weird yellowish color? That is the kind of yellow that we are dealing with here. The kind of yellow that sets in as a product of age onto fabrics and plastics. So literally, in fact, that they managed to treat these clear PVC belts with a chemical process that sped up the aging and added in that yellow. The color for this season was so challenging, in fact, that one of the headlines that was a review for this show was titled, "Not a Color for Cowards." The yellowing continues with these little charm keychain things that are bunches of old keys and small scissors that are embedded in yellow perspex. Perspex is that clear stuff that's used to make paperweights. Most of the time, the color palette for a season is selected by trend forecasters or by just some big tastemaker at one of the fabric manufacturers. But Martin was apparently inspired by a vacation that he took to Italy before he started on this season and noticed that the facades of one of the very old buildings was getting very yellow with the age. He thought the color was really beautiful, so he took some pictures, took it back to the studio and said, let's figure out some ways to replicate this color in clothes and accessories. Another interesting note is that Susanna Frankel said in her review, quote, instead of being used as an accent or attention-seeking fashion statement, yellow is treated simply as another neutral, which makes it a tempting proposition for even the most color-shy consumer with the most apparently challenging complexion. So this is kind of like when Red Octobers came out and all the sneakerhead guys started treating red like it was a neutral color for shoes. But I don't treat them like a neutral. Well, maybe I do. So it's almost like because he was using a yellow that is a product of a natural aging process, that he was able to propose these not so much as a like, check it out, my yellow dress. He was proposing yellow as something that could just be a normal part of the wardrobe. It's a really difficult thing to do with a really extreme color. I also really love how the theme of aging gets continued by this season's statement about garment linings. We have what is probably the standout piece from this season that features the yellowed PVC belt and a dress that's been ripped sideways in the middle. Again, this continues the theme of linings fighting the main garment for dominance, and here seen violently ripping through the middle of the garment to make itself known. We have kind of jumped all over the place this week, but that is all. But it doesn't have to be. If you join the Patreon, you get exclusive episodes, you get the extended episodes for just about all of the Margiela series. You get to watch episodes early, you get to watch live streams back. It starts at just $3. I don't know why you wouldn't do it. It's a party. It really is a party. Your life truly is not complete until you have joined the Patreon. JK, your life is good the way it is now, but I would appreciate it if you joined the Patreon. I love you all so much. I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this series. I will, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.